Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
This video will closely analyse a fragment or clip from the 1999 film The Matrix to demonstrate how it uses filmmaking technique to move effectively between complex narratological containers while still allowing the viewer to follow the plot.
Whoa.
The particular scene that will be analysed is the construct scene, where Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne, explains to a bewildered Neo, Keanu Reeves, what the Matrix of this title is.
This is the construct.
The clip opens with an establishing two-shot of Morpheus and Neo. Morpheus is confirming to Neo whether he does really want to know what the Matrix is. The viewer is then shown a camera perspective of Morpheus looking at Neo and, over his shoulder, to Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Moss. Morpheus then prompts Trinity, who looks Neo in the eyes to also confirm that this is what he wants, to take him to the seat where he will be plugged in. The viewer's focalization is through Neo, with Morpheus acting as a homodiegetic narrator throughout. Trinity is seen taking care that Neo is safely sat in the chair while Neo looks around with trepidation. As he looks around, the camera changes and moves subtly so that we get a brief glimpse at what each of the characters around Neo is doing. These camera changes combined with Neo's expression also reflect the viewer's bewilderment of the narrative at this point in the story. When Morpheus inserts the device into the back of Neo's head, the relatively calm yet suspenseful music changes abruptly to a scream. The camera view also jumps to a close-up overhead shot of Neo, who looks like he is in pain. This sudden change informs that something drastic is happening. The viewer, in fact, is going to enter a completely new and unfamiliar container in the form of the construct. The scream ends with a quick jump shot to Morpheus, whose head turns to the right. The viewer is then shown a shot of a computer screen upon which a finger presses the load button. The apparently non-diegetic screaming noise stops as abruptly as it began, and the sound is changed to an audio diegetic of complete silence. At the same time, all the viewer is shown is Neo, but this time in a completely blank space. The camera shot that was close up above Neo's face smoothly pans up and back to a position in front of his face. This, combined with the lack of noise and serene location, signal to Neo and the viewer that the pain of his travel to this new space is over, and he looks around in order to work out where he is now. Still in a fluid, imitating a dreamy state, one take, the camera spies Morpheus in the distance and slowly gets closer to him as he begins, very calmly, to explain what is happening. These careful directorial decisions help the audience and Neo to orientate themselves after the shock of space travel. The slow panning camera also allows the viewer to experience the blank canvas of their environment carefully, and for Morpheus to show how anything can be loaded into this space. Morpheus goes on to further explain the Matrix, and while doing so, a green tint to both Morpheus and Neo is noticeable. Throughout the film, this green tint is applied whenever any of the characters are in the Matrix. This helps the viewer to subtly understand which environment the narrative is currently working within. Morpheus then uses the television to show Neo how he believes the world is in comparison to how it actually is. The camera moves and goes toward the TV screen. The camera movement in the sequence is reminiscent of how the machines that control the Matrix actually move elsewhere in the film, which, in addition to the green tint, also reinforces that the characters are currently in a non-natural environment. As the camera moves in towards the television, Morpheus slowly sits down, becoming a docile body, and the viewer is heavily reminded of the postmodern concept of hyperreality, that the bombardment of images and information we face from such objects as a TV and internet provide. After Morpheus has explained the dream world Neo has been living in, he then sits back in his chair abruptly and clicks the remote control so that the television shows us the world that he has been blinded from. At this point, the camera moves completely through the television screen, here a type of portal, signalling another transfer through which the characters and the audience are going. The use of a kind of warping special effect is also employed to further reinforce that there is a transferal of space, and possibly time, occurring as a diegesis moves to a new container. This transfer is also signalled by the serene and silent diegetic audio being interrupted by non-diegetic discordant orchestral music. The single take camera shot is employed again, calling back to the previous time it was used. This time the viewer knows roughly what might happen, which is reflected in the directorial decisions made of relatively less abrupt camera edits and sound. Ultimately we swoop down the cliff face to Morpheus, who then gets to deliver the memorable "Welcome to the Desert of the Real" line, itself taken from the first page of Baudrillard's book Simulacra and Simulacrum. Throughout this complex yet relatively short sequence, the viewer is both in the position of Neo learning about the Matrix, while simultaneously being able to associate with the other characters of Morpheus and Trinity and their relative degrees of omniscience. For example, as a member of the audience watching the film, we could easily be in the place of Trinity watching Morpheus and Neo on a monitor as they are in the Matrix.
Try to relax.
These various viewpoints are carefully interwoven during the sequence, allowing the viewer to keep a grip on the plot as it jumps between containers in order to tell the story. By allowing the viewer to share the perspective of multiple characters, the audience gets to experience bewilderment and omniscience simultaneously.
It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment, weapons, training simulations.
These two positions are interwoven at a fast pace throughout this sequence, yet incredibly carefully as described previously, so that the viewer is fully able to understand the conflicting perspectives that Neo undergoes during the scene.
Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital
The mise-en-scene of the sequence rapidly changes from the spaceship where Neo is being plugged in, to the blank construct area, and then finally onto the simulation of the real world within the construct area. Through a combination of sound and camera movements, the viewer is indicated to clearly that these changes in the container are occurring. The oppositions of silence to a loud screaming and vice versa within the sound design and the location changes from the darkly lit, cramped conditions of the spaceship to the completely open and bright construct area are used extremely effectively and deliberately to keep the viewer on board with the progress of the plot. Despite all of its complexities, The Matrix succeeds in telling its story. Even with all of its complicated non-mainstream themes, metaphors and narratological complexity, the film was a huge box office success. By analysing the film in close detail, we can see exactly how this was achieved so effectively.
Welcome to the desert of the real.